I'm here with culinary entrepreneur Sasha Zabar and the founder of Glace. Sasha, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Simone.
Of course. So what is Glace?
So I think Glace is completely unique in that in the summer we're an ice cream shop, and in the winter we're this fabulous hot chocolate, destination. And I think that gives us the ability to kind of, one, be a year-round business, which in the ice cream world is not necessarily true. And it also gives us the license to kind of explore and create different desserts that maybe don't fit into the ice cream store idea or cafe idea. And so I think it's kind of its own amalgamation of those two things in a really beautiful space with really good ingredients, and kind of a dessert playground almost. I mean, it's kind of just, it's a kind of an extension of the things that I like to eat when I have a sweet tooth. The space where Glace started was No Glue, which was a gluten-free bakery that we were partners on, that started from originally in Paris. Frederique, who's our partner, started in Paris. She's celiac, and at the time when we opened No Glue, there really wasn't any. There were very few gluten-free options in the kind of bread and pastry space, and this was kind of like a more, like a higher end, more French style, more classic, like cream puffs and eclairs and cakes and croissant, pain au chocolat, and. So No Glue was in the space where Glace started. During COVID, we moved them to a larger space down the block, and it left this vacant, tiny space, 200 square feet. And I'd been making ice cream during COVID as a hobby and viewed it as a chance to kind of start my own business.
You come from a family that's synonymous with New York gourmet food, Eli's Market, Eli's Bread. How did growing up in that environment shape your vision as an entrepreneur?
And Zabar's on the west side.
And Zabar's.
It was just kind of infused throughout everything we did. I mean, we worked in the stores, we went to family events, and all the food would be from our businesses. We talked about business, and it's just kind of part of who we are.
Can you talk about your trajectory from family brand, working within the family business, to starting your own thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said before, I grew up in the business. I worked for my dad in the cheese department in middle school. I sold caviar. Then I worked in the restaurants in high school. Then I went to the hotel school at Cornell, which kind of gave me more lessons in kind of like, finance, statistics, kind of the academic side of it. And then after Cornell, I was starting my own business with two friends up in New Haven, Connecticut. We had a juice bar called the Juice Box, and that was kind of the beginning of identifying trends that were happening in kind of major cities, and this idea of like taking them to like secondary or tertiary markets. And then I came back to New York, back to working with my family, and then COVID happened. And then it was kind of really during COVID when the business was changing so dramatically that I really kind of decided I wanted to go back into working for myself. And that's when kind of the idea of Glace started. And I was making ice cream. And then when we moved No Glue to the space on the corner, that's when I said, I want to do this myself.
Are there any big lessons in entrepreneurship that you learned from your family?
Yeah, I mean, I think the kind of biggest lesson is like how important hard work is. I think you can make mistakes, but if you kind of really grind it out and work through it, you can kind of overcome a lot. And then I also think from watching my dad work and kind of the different businesses he has and the different ideas he came up with, how important it can be to kind of pivot if something isn't working, just instead of kind of like throwing more money at it or kind of change it, do something else, try something else. And I think that's really kind of what gave me the idea like to kind of just change the business, in the winter.
Speaking about the beginning of Glace, how did you fundraise? Did you bootstrap?
Yeah, it was bootstrapped. When I first opened Glace, the space was in okay shape. I painted the floors, hired someone to paint the walls and the ceiling. I bought a ice cream dipping case. I think that was like $16,000. Maybe it might even be. I think actually it was $10,000. And built some kind of like a simple back bar and a front counter. And I bought a kind of grab and go freezer to put like pints in. Maybe that was $4,000. So it was kind of around like $25,000 to get open.
Did you have to do anything else to additionally sustain it during the slow period you were talking about in the winter?
I really had no idea what to expect when our first winter came. I assumed like maybe we'd see a 20% drop off, or maybe 40%. But like I eat ice cream in the winter, so like why doesn't anyone else? But when it got cold, sales like fell off a cliff. Maybe even like 80%. It was really crazy. And one of our popular items when we started had been this sundae called a baked Alaska, and we'd been making meringue for the sundae and then piping it kind of around the cup and toasting it. And I had this idea that like maybe if we changed the recipe and made it more like marshmallow, like a little chewier, a little bit tougher, that we could get it to kind of stick on the rim of the cup and be strong enough to kind of hold the weight. And it took a lot of trial and error, and it was not popular right away, but eventually it became really popular.
So did you know that the s'mores hot chocolate would be the viral sensation that it turned out to be?
I wish. People always ask me like, how do we do it? And like, I wish we had like, at the time, like levers to pull and like, oh, we need a hit, like do this, do that. The reality is I really didn't know it was gonna be a hit, and I didn't even make it. Actually, before we did the hot chocolate, we made these really delicious kind of like gluten-free Belgian waffles, and they were popular. They were actually more popular than the hot chocolate when it first got cold, but they were so time intensive, and people would order them, and then we would tell them like, oh, it's gonna be 6 minutes, and they'd be like, oh no, cancel. So at the time, I really thought like the waffles were gonna be more popular, or I thought they were kind of equally popular, but I could tell even from the beginning that when people received it, the way it looked, like how excited they were when you kind of like watching you put it together, watching you pipe the marshmallow, toast it. It was very theatrical, and I could see how excited people were to try it. So I felt good about it, but in no way did I think it was going to be a viral, go crazy.
Can you tell us a little bit about how sales changed once you went viral for the hot chocolate?
Yeah, absolutely. Sales so dramatically changed that it actually kind of changed the trajectory of our business. It kind of allowed me to build another store, renovate a new store, buy new equipment, build a commissary. But we probably saw, we'd gone from being so slow in that period when it kind of the first cold spell happened, that we probably saw like 100x growth. I think when you take our what I would say were our regular numbers, maybe like a summer day number versus our busiest winter day number, it's probably like five times busier, 10 times busier, something like that. Five times. So a 5x, 10x growth in sales is just astronomical.
In that vein, what specific operational changes did you have to make to sustain the business and keep up with demand while maintaining the high standard?
Yeah, that was our biggest challenge. Even in the beginning when we were slow, and I often say when we were slow, it was almost harder because you're making this product. So for us, it was making the marshmallow fresh twice a day. It was making the hot chocolate every morning, and whipped cream. And when it didn't sell out, to have to come back in and like make a new batch and like throw out the old batch and not be tempted to be like, oh, we can get, you know, it doesn't look perfect, but it still tastes good. We can get one more day. So like being really strict and really regimented about like having it being perfect every day when it wasn't busy. Mm-hmm. Once we got busy, the problem kind of shifted where we just didn't have the equipment to keep up. And so at one point, kind of like maybe in November, December, right after it kind of first started to kind of build momentum, I remember like for days I was just like upstairs. So we have like a mezzanine area, that's our kitchen. And for days I would be like working from like 7 in the morning to like 12 at night, just making like batch after batch after batch after batch of the marshmallow. Because we only had, I think it was like a 10 or 20 quart mixer, which is bigger than your like home KitchenAid. Mm-hmm. But like I could like barely keep up with the demand, like working nonstop. I mean, like really, like the minute one batch ended, like starting the next batch. And we weren't even like that busy at the time. That was like kind of, it was like starting to ramp up. So, you know, what kind of changes did we have to make? I mean, we had to hire more staff, we had to get more equipment, we had to like we were lucky that we had a walk-in refrigerator that had been left over from No Glue upstairs, because just like storing the volume of milk we were going through would have been very difficult. I mean, like a conventional fridge like doesn't actually hold that much dairy. You know, it's like, you know, you go home and you're like putting water away. It's like a case of water fills a fridge. Now imagine like 100 cases of milk. Yeah.
The good and the bad parts of social media is that a lot of people talk about it, but that also means maintaining that expectation for what it's going to taste like and look like every single time. So I can imagine that would be pretty challenging.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that it looks the way people expect it to look, that the taste is as good or surpasses their expectation, that the kind of price value ratio is in line, and then of course like customer service. I mean, you can have like the most beautiful item and so delicious, but if someone's nasty or rude to you, it ruins the experience.
Social media has been so critical to the expansion of your brand and franchise at this point. Can you talk a little bit about what your philosophy is when marketing a food business through TikTok or Instagram?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, you know, going back to like when we started and you know, have like wishing I had the levers to pull to kind of build business, you know, I think we've now kind of learned some of those levers. I mean, we invest in really good content, we invest in really good social media, we invest in good publicity. And as line items, those are, you know, big line items for our business. But I do believe like that when you're, you know, really like operating efficiently across those three channels, and you're putting through really good and interesting content, it performs really well.
Yeah. So you worked on a variety of things from hospitality to digital strategy. What's a common thread that ties those diverse experiences together?
I think trying to be as creative as possible kind of in the food space is what's tied everything together. You know, it kind of starts with a simple idea, whether it's ice cream or baked goods or even back to the end of the day, like juice bars. But it's always like taking kind of a simple conceit and trying to make it a little different, a little more creative.
New York City is such a competitive landscape when it comes to viral treats, but ice cream and candy in general, how do you keep your finger on the pulse?
Yeah, I mean, I think like historically, you know, when you look at like the famous ice cream shops or famous candy shops or famous dessert shops, these are businesses that were built over like decades, like at least years, if not decades. And you know, they're like institutions. And I think with social media, what you're seeing is like a place like us, or you know, I mean, or Cronut, or I mean, you know, a million things like this can pop out of nowhere and become like so recognizable and so popular overnight. But the like lifespan of those businesses, I think, like shrinks dramatically. It's like people see it, they try it, and you kind of have this like short window to either capitalize and kind of be able to build on it, or kind of fade away. And because so many people are seeing, like, you know, you go into your like explore page on Instagram or TikTok, and it's like, you know, it's like you can see like what's going on around the world in like, you know, 30 seconds. You know, this ice cream is blowing up in Singapore, and this ice cream is blowing up in Japan, and this, you know, crazy looking thing is in New York. So our philosophy is to constantly improve. So we did that when we opened this tiny store. We built it for nothing. When we first got popular, I rented the space next door. I built a brand new store. Like, was that the best use of capital? Maybe not, but I felt like the store needed to look and feel like beyond customers' expectations who had seen it on Instagram. And so in that sense, I felt like we were like constantly improving the customer experience, constantly improving the feel and the kind of like foundation of the brand. And then also on product, I think we're like constantly looking for like better ingredients, you know, better milk. When we started, we were using just kind of a like regular milk from, you know, it was like relatively local, but it wasn't organic or fancy. And now we use a really good dairy up in Battenkill. And so, and like, or the chocolate or like anything, like, if we can just improve like 1%, you know, it's meaningful. Yeah. And then in terms of like content, I think we're kind of finding the balance between, you know, always creating kind of something a little bit new, but sticking within kind of this like brands, kind of our brand standards. So like, well, you know, making sure that everything we think of or I create kind of fits within our philosophy, which is like, you know, it has to taste really good. It has to use really good ingredients. We have to make as much of it ourselves as possible, and we need to, and it needs to be a little bit different than what people are expecting. And I think when we follow, you know, keeping our pulse on kind of what's going on, I'm not so worried about that. What I'm more worried about is, like, does everything we do fit within the framework I just mentioned?
You've recently expanded into gloss candy. What was the motivation behind that?
So, you know, I grew up, Gloss is on 91st Street. I grew up on 92nd Street, so I know the neighborhood really well. I went to school, you know, a couple blocks away, and I like just so clearly remember like the way the neighborhood felt growing up. That we had a local ice cream shop, we had you know, these delis and kind of candy stores. I mean, I was at my uncle's birthday yesterday, and somebody came up to me and they said, "Oh, I just read this interview where, you know, you did where you mentioned Millionaire's Deli. You know, my daughter was a year above you, and that was our favorite place in the world to go." So like that was the kind of idea behind candy.
You've had partnerships with major brands like J. Crew and David Yurman. Can you tell us how these opportunities came about and what you look for when partnering with a brand?
Absolutely. So the coolest collab that we ever did, which you didn't mention, was when we got a cold call from Britney Spears, and she had seen our items on Instagram and thought they were like the coolest thing in the world, and wanted to create her own flavor and raise money at the same time. So that was, I got an email, and so I got a call, then I got and I thought it was fake, then I got an email from her manager, I thought it was also fake, and it was right after kind of everything had exploded, and I reached out to a friend of mine who is she does like kind of celebrity, like it's like a staffing agency for personal assistants for celebrities. And I said, like, do you know this person? Is he real? And she verified that it was her manager, and you know, so that was completely inbound. I would say like 99% of the collaborations we've done are just, you know, brands reaching out to us either through social media or through our publicist, or and just kind of taking the opportunities one by one.
Looking to the future, what's your ultimate goal with Gloss?
To continue growing sustainably, improving as we do, and then having, you know, the creative component is what excites me the most. I mean, I think it's great when a business is doing well and with Glace, I've been able to kind of turn it from a kind of side project to my career. But just like in the brands that you mentioned before, like doing really cool things with cool brands in the kind of food space is what makes me the most excited. So like if Britney Spears calls and she wants Britney Spears hot chocolate, and how can we make it different? That's cool. If the Kardashians come in and they want something really cool, like we'll make it for them. So I like being challenged, and one of the kind of cool things about Glace is like, yes, we started as an ice cream shop, and then we became famous for our hot chocolate, but we've done like so many different kinds of desserts. We're not just an ice cream shop. We're not just defined by different flavors or scoops. I mean, we can kind of create anything sweet. It could be hot, it can be cold, it could be a drink, it could be a dessert, it could be ice cream, and that's really fun and exciting.
What does growth mean to you in such a niche market, especially something like desserts?
Well, I think like when I say like grow sustainably, it means grow the business, one, in a way that I can afford. So not becoming over levered, not taking on capital, running the business profitably. I mean, I think we see a lot of kind of trends that happen, and then there's kind of this explosive growth behind them, whether it's cookies or cupcakes or donuts. And I'm always skeptical of how, those businesses raise lots of money, they grow really quickly, and they may not be profitable in the beginning, but they hope that when they get big enough, eventually they will become profitable. Really, like we talked about earlier with social media and the kind of the lifespan of an Instagram business, to make sure that this business is around, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, as long as we want to be in the business.
Are there any other big food ideas or concepts that you're excited to explore down the line?
Yeah, I mean, I think even in the ice cream space, there's so much we haven't done, and there's so many different directions that we can kind of pursue going forward. I mean, things like, for years, when we first opened Glace, we had two soft serve flavors. One of them was an orange creamsicle, and the other one was a Meyer lemon Greek yogurt. And that Greek yogurt has been on our menu ever since. It was just so popular. And so I knew like frozen yogurt was going to have a moment again. And now I feel like in the last kind of 6 months, we're starting to see a bunch of new kind of frozen yogurt concepts coming into the market. And so I think I should have moved a little bit faster, but it's fun kind of seeing these trends happening and then kind of creating concepts around them.
What do you have coming up in the immediate pipeline that people can look forward to?
Well, we have our fall menu coming out in September, which I'm excited about, which is kind of our like segue into hot chocolate. And then we have obviously this year's hot chocolate season, which I think we have some really exciting things in the works. And then we have like a million things that are kind of like around the periphery that are like maybe happening, maybe not happening, that are exciting as well.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Sasha. This was a great talk.
Thanks for having me.